In Europe, 1347, the Bubonic Plague arrived in Italy by rats on a ship. It was scary. But seriously though, it wiped out 25 million people between 1348 and 1350. Only 2 years. People were dying so rapidly that they had to be buried in mass graves because they didn't have enough money or places to bury them individually. It hit England 6 times in the 13th century. Holy plague doctor! Speaking of plague doctors, they covered every inch of their bodies in clothing to prevent from getting the plague. Oh my god, that would be hot. Literally freaking hot. I mean, like, you're covered in heavy leather. Yeah. They wore these masks with long pointy noses, about a foot long, and they filled them up with herbs and flowers. They put glasses or goggles over the eye holes in the masks. I don't know why, but they did. They wore these big heavy boots made out of goat leather under their long coats that were from head to toe, and they'd wear a whole bunch of stuff underneath that as well. They would wear these leather gloves, these big leather gloves. They would wear these specific hats so that the people who were getting treated or who had the disease would know that they were the doctors, but they were also seeing hallucinations too. So they had these wooden cane stick pokey thingies to poke the boobos of people and pop them. They wouldn't poke your buttons, they'd poke your boobos. Imagine seeing these creepy plague doctors when you were having hallucinations. Freaky, right? Yeah. Now enough about these creepy plague doctors. The plague could have been the Pneumonic Plague as well as the Bubonic Plague. And the Pneumonic Plague was spread throughout the air, so it was more likely to get it by being near someone who already had it. The symptoms of the Pneumonic Plague and the Bubonic Plague weren't very similar though. The Bubonic Plague consisted of buboes, which were large, chicken egg-sized lumps on the skin that were painful, lymph node gland swellings. They would turn purple and or black. They were found in the armpits, neck, and groin area. Ouch. You would also get chills, a fever, muscle pains, seizures, headaches, and fatigue. The Pneumonic Plague was an infection of the lungs. You would get, the symptoms were cough, high fever, bloody septum, nausea and vomiting, weakness, chest pains, and difficulty breathing. Oh, it hurts! People with the Bubonic Plague would die about 6 days of getting the disease, and people with the Pneumonic Plague would die in only 3. But not everybody who got it died. They just delayed it for a while, but they did eventually die, like every human being will and has. Yay. People would try the craziest thing to cure and prevent the plague. For example, they would try to do aromatherapy, which they would get herbs and flowers and put them all around them. This is also what the plague doctors would put in their long masks, as I mentioned before. Another crazy thing they would do, they would live in the sewers. Now, they did not know that the sewers were dangerous in any way, but they would go down there since the Pneumonic Plague would travel through the air. They thought that it would be better down there because the air from above where all the sick people could get down there. But they did die from other diseases and bacteria that were down in the sewers from the human waste. Yuck. They also would try to kill the Jews because they thought the Jews were the cause of the plague. They would burn them at the stake, all in groups, and they would burn them in their houses with their families. How terrible is that? Another thing that the people would do, they would have groups of people called the Flagellants, and they would go around beating themselves because they thought that the plague was a punishment from God, and they were just trying to make up for their sins. By the way, did you know that Ring Around the Rosie is not a harmless nursery rhyme? It is about the Black Death. Think about that when you're playing it again. I got a blister on my foot. Into the fire. I'm falling.
낮에는 너만큼 따사로운 그런 선어에 커피 식기도 전에 원샷 때리는 선어.
Only 2 years. People were dying so rapidly that they had to be buried in mass graves because they didn't have enough money or places to bury. The bubonic plague consisted of buboes, which were large chicken-like. Okay, ready?
It's recording.
Oh. The bubonic plague consisted of large.
Enjoying yourself, sir.
Sir. The plague is cough, bloody septum.